All right, so we're here for our next nerd takes. We're going to be talking about giving you a Blues 2021-22 season preview.
Ranking what we think, how we feel the season's going to go.
Yeah, right. We're gonna put on our little wizard hats and be able to somehow tell the future based on what has happened since the end of the last season. So let's talk about the end of the last season. First of all, they exit in the first round of the playoffs. They kind of get railroaded by
steamrolled.
A darn good team of the Avalanche. So what were your thoughts kind of at the end of the season? Were you pleased, kind of pissed, or none of the above?
Kind of none of the above. I knew beating the Avalanche was going to be a tough task. But when you looked at how they, I guess maybe just a little disappointed that we didn't at least win a game. Because when you look how we fared against them during the regular season, we played them really tough.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to play them, and then we got them, and then it just didn't go well. They looked lost out there. I went to game one, and that was a mistake.
Yeah. Well,
and it just there were only maybe 20 minutes where I felt like the Blues played up to their potential and actually hung with them. 20 minutes in the entire series, and then the rest of it they were just completely outclassed.
Yeah, I think they started to get better around game 3, game 4. At least they were making it more competitive, but they just weren't putting the puck in the net. And even when they were immediately getting scored back on.
Right.
Colorado just had too much firepower for them.
Good. They got a lot of skill. They're good.
So as a result, the Blues have made some moves and they've had some signings, but they've also had some losses. So moves. The major move for the entire offseason was getting Pavel Buchnevich, right?
That's how you say it.
Buchnevich.
Who knows?
Let's go Buchnevich. That
sounds right.
Actually sounds more right. So that was a trade for Sammy Blais and a second rounder. And then they also went ahead and extended him for 4 more years for $5.8 million per. He scored 48 points in 54 games last year. So you think this is a good move?
I think so. I mean, I think we needed more scoring. We had to improve our top 6, and he does that. And he's kind of he's kind of on that upward trajectory right now. So the 5.8, it's you look at his past few seasons, yeah, it makes sense. And hopefully we look back on that in a couple of years and we realize it's a bargain.
Yeah, I think if he continues to perform like he was, and remember, he was coming from New York, so they're not exactly the best team in the league. They had an okay season last year, but
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does, because he was playing with 2 pretty good line mates when he was playing with Panarin or Zibanejad. So hopefully he can develop some kind of chemistry with whoever he's going to play with this season.
Right.
I don't know that yet.
I was just saying, whoever it's going to be interesting, because they also had some signings. The big one was Brandon Saad. He signed for 5 years for $4.5 million, pretty much annual value. He only scored 24 points last year with the Avalanche, but he also played on a third line, and he has had a lot more success when he played for Chicago. He scored 21 goals and 33 points in 58 games the year before that.
Yeah, I think he's only 28, and I feel like he's been playing for so much longer. But I mean, I like it. Again, we needed to add, forward depth to the forward core. The term, but the AAV, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think this is also another one that I'm just not really sure what to make of it. Obviously, with him being a former Blackhawk, I immediately am like, I don't know. That was my first initial reaction. But then I was you know what? I probably didn't like him because he's fucking good,
and he was on the Hawks.
And he was on the Hawks, and he had a bad year last year. And
hopefully he wasn't asked to do a lot. So very similar to, Buchnevich was playing a top 6. It'd be interesting to see how his numbers look if he's playing top 6 minutes instead of third line minutes, because they didn't need him to be a top 6 forward. Colorado's loaded.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely going to be a top 6 for us.
I think so.
Some other signings, these are familiar names, but some are pretty impactful. Jordan Kyrou for 2 years at 2.8. He had 35 points last year. I think that's a huge signing.
They had to lock him up. I mean, RFA bridge deal, a little, similar to the Army's done a 2-year prove it deal, and then if it keeps trajectory keeps going up, he's going to make some more, and if not, then he'll re-sign again for maybe another 1 or 2 years, depending on that, and then until he can hopefully get his big payday, like some of the others we're going to talk about.
Well, right. So we had a couple other kind of role playing, again, 2-year signings. Barbashev for 2 years at 2.25, Sanford for 1 year for $2 million, and then Bozak for 1 year for $750,000. Any of those stand out to you, or are you happy about?
Sanford for $2 million just seems a little steep. I mean, I get you don't want to go to arbitration because that can get pretty contentious in those hearings. I mean, understanding like it's all business. They're going to make their case. You're going to make your case, but they talk a lot of shit in those meetings. Yeah. Like they rip you apart in those meetings. I just thought $2 million was a little too much. And Bozak for 700. Yeah. I mean, I think it can get up to 2 million with performance incentives. So, I mean, yeah, I think I'm happy to have him back, not for $5 million a year, but for that much. Sure.
I was going to say, so even though I think we overpaid for Sanford, we definitely underpaid, in my opinion, for Bozak, and you could argue Barbashev too. So I think it was kind of like a net zero.
Love Barbie. Yeah.
I do love Barbie. And then the big one was Parayko for 8 years, $52 million. I mean, you got to do it. That's just kind of what defensemen are now, right? You just have to sign them for these gigantic terms, whether we like it or not.
A lot of 8-year contracts for defensemen in the offseason.
That's the thing now. And I guess, it's just the trend of the league. I think that just like with everything, we were seeing a lot of 10-year contracts, maybe 10 years ago for offensemen, and that stopped because people realized this is fucking stupid.
This is dumb. 14-year contracts.
Yeah, right. So I think that we're just kind of happy. It's what's going on right now. It's the trend, but I don't think it's going to be forever. But I am happy to have Parayko. He's obviously a stud. He needs to pick it up. After last year, though, he had an off year last year.
He was hurt, so hopefully he's back to 100%. But I mean, I think this is a win-win because the Blues get to lock him up, and they get to lock him up at 6.5, and he gets to make, not to say that he wasn't making life-changing money before, but yeah, could he have waited a couple years and then, or maybe even 1 year, prove that he was back and probably get 8 or 9? Yeah, but the risk reward on that, given his history, like I'm glad they were able to get this done. And again, same with Pavel. We could look back on this in a couple of years and realize that we have this guy for $6.5 million for the next 6 years, and it's a steal. When you look at some of especially the contracts that were signed this offseason, with so many guys making 9+ that arguably should not be making 9+, and you're gonna look back on this one and be like, yeah, this guy's just as good, if not better, and he's making $3 million less.
Yeah, and I think that after Petro, I would imagine the Army was not wanting it to get to that situation again.
Yeah, but he should have just signed Petro. But whatever.
I'm not disagreeing with that. But I am saying that I think that
we could have a whole episode on that.
I think that was definitely a motive. I would think that was a motivator there.
I think so too. Absolutely.
So we had a few losses. Gunnarsson retired. Steen, even though he didn't really play last year, he also is officially retired.
Officially, yeah.
We lost Schwartz to Seattle, and we lost Hoffman to the Canadiens.
And Dunn to Seattle.
Oh, and Dunn to Seattle too. That's right.
Dunn in the expansion draft, and then Schwartz to free agency. Which I mean, good for him. Like it sucks, but I think he needed a fresh start, and good for him. And nothing but the best. Hopefully, he does well there. But it sucks losing him, a homegrown guy.
Yeah, I love Schwartzy, but again, we've been paying him a lot of money, and he's making a ton in Seattle. It's probably too much for us, especially with some of the moves we still have to make. At least one move we still have to make. We weren't going to be able to afford all these other players and also bring him back to that contract. It's just
total cap casualty. And I mean, and again, when you compare it to look at the guys who we brought in, it's it's kind of hopefully it's a net positive for us.
Yeah, you're right. You bring in those two guys. I mean, Saad as well, and you lose Schwartz. I think that it's kind of right now on paper it looks pretty good. There was also a draft. And I don't know a whole lot about these guys, but we only had 4 picks in the draft. We've traded away a few draft picks in the last few years for some of our current roster men. And we've got a couple forwards and a couple defensemen. But when reading about these guys, we kind of were given a pretty good grade for the draft. I think that most of these players, they were saying, for example, the defenseman Tyson Galloway, and also Ivan Voroboyov. They were rated way higher, and they should have gone higher in the draft. So I think even having 4 picks, I think we kind of did okay with it.
Yeah, you got to do the best you can.
Well, yeah, and I think the one thing that was surprising about the draft is that no major things happened, which is usually kind of what Army does. I guess something did happen, but not like over the top. Wow, I think a lot of us expected there to be more moves.
I think a lot of people expected Vladdy to get traded there during the draft.
Yeah, right. Well, more on that in a second. The last thing that I just kind of happened a few days ago was that we invited James Neal and Michael Froelich to our camp to try out. What do you think about these guys?
I think it's.
James Neal is intriguing to me. James Neal 3 years ago or 2 years ago even was an absolute stud.
Yeah, he can put the puck in the net, and I think that's probably why they got him. Why they gave him a professional tryout. It's just a question of, can he crack the roster?
Yeah,
who knows? I mean, I like those. I like it because it gives you a veteran guy, but then at the same time, you look at some of the other guys on our roster, and it's the age-old question of like giving those guys some time to see what you got. But is that going to be like, if it turns out to be like, oh my God, we got a stud, then that decision looks brilliant. And if it turns out, why are we giving this guy so much ice time because he's terrible? Then you kind of, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you look at some of the young guys, it's like, you want to make sure Kyrou gets enough ice time. You want to make sure Thomas gets enough ice time. You want to make sure Costin gets ice time to see what he is. What's he going to be? Like, what's he going to be when he grows up? And we still don't really know that yet. But I guess it's up to them to beat those guys in camp.
Well, so you mentioned, let's talk about some question marks. First off is Robert Thomas. Like, he hasn't been signed yet, and I think he's probably, I would say going into the offseason, he was the number one player that we wanted to sign, and it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, the number one RFA for sure. And we were chatting about this earlier, and I just think it's a procedural thing. I'm sure they're talking. I'm sure they're nailing down numbers right now. Army can't sign him because they don't have the cap space. But as soon as they can put Sonny on long-term IR, then that frees up the cap space, and then they can sign him. Because I would expect him to sign for about what Kyrou is, a little bit more, a little bit less. Like, I don't really know, but like, it's going to be 3 or under, but it's going to be that high twos or $3 million a year for a couple of years. But you need to free up cap space to do that. The problem is that when Sonny's ready to come off IR, what do you do? And that leads us to the other thing.
Yeah, the big question mark is Vladdy. Like, well, what happens with him? You can't mathematically have him on the team and sign Thomas and have all these other players. We don't go under the cap. I don't know, unless someone like gets, again, that this could be, you don't want to say like, hopefully someone gets hurt, but like, that's almost like the situation that we're in. If we possibly have all those players coming back, I think a move's got to be made.
A move will have to be made. And I think with the pending Sonny move, and then hopefully signing Thomas, like, you kick the can down the road a little bit, and it gives you some time. But at this point in time, you're kind of dug in, because Army's not going to give up Vladdy for nothing.
Yeah. But
teams aren't going to get him because they don't know what he is yet. So, best case, Vladdy comes out, proves that he's himself again, puts the puck in the net, starts generating some interest, and then Army can get him for something, retain some of his salary and get more.
What's best case scenario? Like, what do we want out of him? I think I'd say at least.
I have no idea.
No idea.
Asking. I have no, but if he's himself, you're talking about, like, it's, as far as like the amount of goals that have been scored in the last 5 years, I think it's him, Matthews, and Ovechkin are the top 3 on that list.
Yeah.
So 30 goal scorers don't grow on trees. You could argue that he should be a 40 goal scorer. He's done it once, but if he's back to himself, then you're going to be able to get a lot for him, because you've got an extra year of control. 7.5 isn't terrible, but for a guy who's going to put 35 or 40 in the net, 7.5 is actually a really good number when you look at some of the other contracts out there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking multiple picks, multiple prospects, probably easily, but I don't think Army's going to get that because I don't think you can hang on to him long enough to prove that. I think it's going to be a very small sample size. Be like, look, he's healthy. And then he's going to have to settle for not, the King's ransom, but maybe like the Joker's ransom, or or if you're, playing cards, the Jack's ransom, or
that's what's crazy is that best case scenario, he comes out and he's just putting the puck in the back of the net that first month, just killing it. And then we have to trade him. And all the Blues fans in the world will be losing their fucking minds for why do we trade him? He's the best. And they wouldn't necessarily be wrong, but also they are wrong.
Well, they are wrong because he requested a trade.
Yeah.
It was public. It's out there. It's known.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. He's being a professional right now because he's got to play hockey unless he sits out the season, which I don't think he wants to do, because then he's just right back in this. He's back in the same situation next year because people don't know if he's healthy or not or anything. And he's got another year on his contract. So I don't know. I mean, it sucks that it got to this point with him, but hopefully he's better. We can trade him. We can get some stuff, and hopefully he goes on and he's healthy and he has a good rest of his career.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So who needs to step up? Like, what are we thinking as far as offense?
Everybody.
Right. I know.
I mean, it's funny, when you like keys to the season, it's almost like rinse and repeat. Like you could say the same thing for like 75% of the teams in the league, where you need to improve your secondary scoring and you need to improve your defense, period. Because we've got 3 really good defensemen, but then what after that, what do you have? You don't really know. We've got 2 probably pretty solid lines, especially after the offseason moves. But then after that, you don't really, we can't be too top heavy. I mean, when you look at the teams that have won the last few years, they're scoring and even when we won the cup, it was all 4 lines and rolling all 4 lines and them being productive. We can't just rely on O'Reilly and Perron every single night.
Yeah, and even O'Reilly, admittedly, has had an off year with scoring. Braden Shen had a little bit of he was very streaky. I think when he went out, I was devastated with Sundqvist. I mean, I think that it cannot be understated how big of an impact he has on the team.
No, totally.
I think Kyrou and Thomas as well both have to keep going on that upward trajectory, because Thomas had a setback for
Thomas has to stay healthy.
He's got to stay healthy, right? And then we've seen Kyrou. Kyrou's got to be basically. I mean, coach has got to take.
He started off hot, and then he just cooled off. He wasn't at that same level after the first month and a half of the season when he was just on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if we're talking defense, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, Falk is an absolute stud, and I think if those of you who know about hockey, you know how good he is. Torrey Krug again had some flashy moments, but he's not a goal scorer, and that's what a lot of people were expecting for some reason when he historically has not scored goals, right?
He's a power play quarterback,
right? Yeah, so
is what he does, which is odd because you could argue so is Falk, but I mean, hopefully. Year 2, like you saw Falk adjust, and his year 1 was terrible,
right?
But year 2, you saw he started playing like himself. Hopefully, Krug has the same kind of trajectory where now he's used to it. Different place. He was in Boston his whole career. All right, now year 2, show me something.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, so really the last kind of thoughts are, before we give ourselves the ratings, what are our expectations for this year as far as how we finish in the regular season and playoffs? If we are going to the playoffs, what do you think?
I mean, I think we'll make the playoffs just because, there's a ton of teams in hockey that make the playoffs.
Well, and the divisions are being realigned again back to what they were.
They're going back to normal. But no, I mean, I think they'll make the playoffs. They're definitely a playoff team. It's just a question of, are they a cup team?
Yeah, I think go ahead.
It makes me feel like the teams when we were growing up, where it's you knew they were going to make the playoffs, but then you knew they probably weren't going to do anything once they got there.
Yeah, and it reminds me a little bit of, I don't want to say the year we won the cup, because that's like saying I'm predicting us to win a cup. But what I mean is that we've had a lot of surprising turnover in the last year, And sometimes it wouldn't shock me, let's put it this way, is if we start out slow, because they're figuring out how to play with one another. And then at some point, hopefully it clicks. You just got to hope it clicks and continues at the right point. Similar things happen in the Cardinals right now, right? I mean, they had a lot of new people, new faces, and people that are like, all right, this is your official role now. Took them a few months, and now they're finally starting to play the way they need to be playing.
They've won like 7 in a row, I think.
Yeah, so I think that can happen with the Blues. I think we've got some opportunities there. Binnington's got to go back to the way he was playing a year before that.
Yep.
Really, honestly, the spring before the bubble, he needs to go back to that because he hasn't played as well since then.
Right.
So, all right. So as far as a rating, I am going to give this the whole entire Blues offseason. I'm giving it a 7, and so I'm giving it a Dagobah Luke. Pretty good. Could have been better, but also I think that Armstrong was able to make some pretty surprising changes and moves that I'm cautiously optimistic about. So Dagobah Luke, 7 out of 10.
I will go Hoff Luke. I will go 6 out of 10. I think, not hating on him, I think he did the best he could. I mean, he's a wizard when it comes to trades, and then some of the well, hopefully the money that he doled out is well spent. But I just think not moving Tarasenko is just, you did not want this to happen.
Yeah.
You did not want to start the season with him. You should have unloaded. Like, they probably had multiple, and I mean, I read all the stories. There were multiple teams interested in it, but they weren't, either we weren't willing to take some of his salary on to get the return that we wanted, or a third team involved, or whatever you want to call it. It's like, I get that you don't want to just give him away, but the deal should have been done. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, and I guess our ratings could change in the next couple of weeks, because who the heck knows? There's still two major moves that need to be made during this offseason, and the season starts pretty soon. So
right.
this could go from a 7 to a 10, or even maybe a Mandalorian Luke, or it could be pretty darn fucking quick. So
yeah, it could be milk chugging Luke really fast.
Oh God, yeah. That's the word. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed our 2021-2022 St. Louis Blues off-season recap and review. And let's hope for a good season. So let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.
All right. Until next time, Nerd Takes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.